Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about the Britto picture project now that we have finished the plans and are ready to rock and roll on our good paper. All right, first off is a finished sample of the project. Remember, this is my project, so we don't want to copy it. You want to think about what you're going to do yourself, and this is a sample of one of Romero Britto's actual artworks. All right, let's go over the criteria so you know what I'm looking for while you're working on the project. The Britto picture is worth 100 points. First off is interesting main object drawn simply, and it should fill about a third of the page. Remember, because the background's interesting, so we do need to see background in this project. Lines creating shapes in the background. 20 points has at least 20 points because we need to have all the different color patterns. If we don't have a lot of shapes, then we won't have a lot of places to add color patterns. So at least 20 shapes. Boldly outlined in black. 15 points, created at least 5 color patterns that are repeated. You can have more, but you want to be able to repeat it at least one other time. I think for my picture, I think I repeated my patterns at least in 3 different shapes. 15 points, picture pops. You want to use bright and vibrant colors. It should be happy like Britto's work. You don't want to use dull colors. Colored neatly and solid for the media use because you're going to be able to use different things for this project. For example, you can use markers, colored pencils, crayons, Sharpie marker for the outlining, and depending on which media you use will determine when you outline if you do not have a Sharpie. If you have a Sharpie, do your outlines first. All right, and of course, craftsmanship. What's the overall appearance? Is it finished? Did you follow the directions? Did you put forth your best? That means 100% working daily on the project. All right, let's go over the directions for the drawing. The Britto picture is a 12-day project. First thing you're going to do is draw lightly. This should be done on white paper so that it stands out more. The manila paper is not going to pop because it already has a color to it as much as white paper will. Okay, you want to be able to erase and adjust if you need be, and if you draw too darkly, it leaves shadows and it will show through on light colors later. Draw lightly on project paper. Need one main object, simplified, drawn without a lot of details. Fill at least a third of the paper, not too small, not too big. Much of Britto's patterns are in the background of his work. Your image may be an animal, human, alien, vehicle, or another interesting object. You want it to look interesting and cool. It needs to pop. And at this point, your plan should have been okay. And if your plan was okay, then your main object drawing should be okay. Add background accents like hearts, stars, or small item that goes with your main object, like my toy mice that goes with my cat. Come up with your own things. Don't copy mine. Mine is actually a picture of Sid and his toy mice that he has. Step 3, draw lines in the background that cut the plane into shapes. We did that on our planning paper. The lines may be straight or curved or a mix of both. Plan where your lines will go before drawing them. That will break the background into cubist-like shapes. Again, see my sample, which we'll see throughout the slideshow and in our assignments and our daily work directions. Think about the placement and the size of shapes that they will create. If you make them too small, you might not be able to color them neatly. You want your lines to cross over in areas, creating new and interesting shapes. Also, you may have a few lines that go straight through your main object to make more shapes to make the coloring more eye-catching. Plan carefully so you're not cutting through areas you want to stand out or will make tiny shapes. You want your main objects to still stand out because there's a lot of patterns in the background. Your main object should be the focus of the picture. And again, you need at least 20 individual shapes in your picture. More is great. My picture is pretty simple and it has over 40. All right, let's talk about step 1 of drawing on your good paper. Remember, this is your second drawing. You've already done the plan. Draw lightly on your project paper. And good white drawing paper is the best for this project. You need one main object, simplified, drawn without a lot of details. So you don't have a lot of small shapes. I've simplified the cat. He almost looks kind of like I created a cartoon out of him of my own style. Think about what Britto's subject matter looks like in his pictures and how he draws them. It should fill at least a third of the paper because you don't want it to be too small or too big, because the background is important in this project so that we can have all the beautiful patterns like in Britto's work. Again, your image can be an animal, human, alien, a vehicle, or another interesting object. At this point, you should know whether or not your object works. You want it to look interesting and cool, and it needs to pop. And at this point, you're going to stop and check in because I want to make sure that your drawing is looking interesting and it fills the page and all this good stuff. And of course, you want to get my feedback before you go on to the next step. Right, then you're going to add accents in the background. You may have them and you don't necessarily have them. You can have hearts and stars or a small item that goes with your main object, like the toy mice that goes with my cat. If it was a dog, it could be bones. If it's a giraffe, it could be leaves floating around the background. There's many different things that you could have with your drawing. And again, 3 is a pretty good number for our size of paper. You don't want it to get too busy and take away from the picture. All right, then you want to add your lines to the background. Remember, you need at least 20 shapes. You can draw lines in the background that cut the plane into shapes. So for example, if I look here, see it went through here, went through here, went through here, and this one went through here. So it created more shapes. You want to have the shapes so that you can fill them in with the background. They can be curved, and this one actually goes through, skips the cat, and then it comes out back over here, and this curved line goes through the cat. It can be straight. And I have both straight and curved because it gives it more movement to the picture that way. Plan where your lines will go through. Now remember on my plan, I had the this mouse and ear placement not real good. It was cutting into more shapes. You see now I made this shape bigger. So there's room. I think it cut, I think the ear went through the top of the mouse. So it had a lot more shapes. And it was too tiny of an area. So that's why you want to plan where you're drawing things. Think about the placement and the size. You don't want them to be way too small so that you can't color them neatly or add patterns, because a lot of this, all of the background shapes will have pattern and some inside your main object. You want your lines to cross over in areas, creating new and interesting shapes. Also, you may have a few lines that go through your main object. See, this one I have 2 lines that go through the cat. Not too many though. And this will make it more interesting for coloring and more eye-catching. Be careful, like my ear, that you're not cutting through areas or overdoing shapes, because you want your main object to still stand out, because the background is going to be full of patterns. You need at least 20 individual shapes in the picture. More is great. Like I said, mine has over 40 and it's not real complicated. And of course, then we're going to stop and check in. I want to make sure the lines are good. I want to make sure that you don't have, shapes being cut off weird. You want to double check that you have at least 20 shapes. And you want to get my feedback before you move on, because once we start to color an outline, There's no going back. You can't erase. All right, directions for outlining and coloring. First, you want to decide what you will use to color your picture. Mine, I used markers, and I had a variety of colors available so that I could have light and darks. I did one shape in my mice with color pencil, and of course, I used Sharpie for my bold outlines. So you want to think about what you're going to use to color, and I'll talk about that some more when we get to the coloring portion. You want to, first off, if you have a Sharpie, boldly outline all the work first. You can fill in small shapes if you want to, like the nose of my cat is filled in solid, the nose of my mice and my tiny little mice eyes are filled in solid. Just small shapes, not large areas and not a lot of it. If you do not have a Sharpie, and this is real important, or a permanent black marker, and you are using markers or another wet medium, which I can't think of anything else you guys will be using besides markers. We're not using paint for this. What happens is if you are using normal markers and you have a normal marker to outline, if you do all the black outlining first, what's going to happen is when you touch, for example, with yellow against the black line that's already there and it's not permanent, it will smear the color, and you don't want to find out the hard way for that. Okay. All right, color picture with bold, bright, vibrant colors like Britto. May use markers, color pencils, crayons, and that's it. Oil pastels and paint is not an option this year. You need at least 5 different patterns for your picture to be repeated in your image. For example, stripes, polka dots, hearts, line designs, and other shapes. My sample that we have in the picture has 6 different patterns. The majorities of the shape of a main object may be colored solid. I used some blues and turquoise for Sid, and I just had a few that actually had patterns. Accent items may be solid or have pattern, or both. All the shapes in the background must be colored with patterns. Practice colors and patterns first on another piece of paper to see how they look, and if the way you color them works. Some medium colors can go on top of a solid color. Some colors will need to be colored separated. For example, a blue background with yellow polka dots. The yellow polka dots will need to be colored first and the blue colored carefully around them. Otherwise, what happens when you put a color over top of some colors, it's going to change the color and not look as good. For example, if I, try to do orange on top of blue, the orange is going to turn brown. So you want to work these out on a different piece of paper to see what will work. And yes, you may use a combination of different mediums. Plan where your color patterns will go in the picture. One colored pattern at a time in multiple shapes to have them spaced. Me, I started with my pink shapes with the violet patterns, and then I did my next one so that I knew where I was putting them and planned ahead of time. And you can always write where you want to put each color on your planning paper so that you remember. Plan what color patterns will go on your main object. You want the object to pop like Britto's. Remember, it wants to stand out. You don't want it to get lost in the background. For me, I also use different colors on my main object than in the background. Color neatly and solid for the medium you use. Mine has, again, Sharpie markers, and colored pencils. All right, bold outline. So you see this is here where I did the solid, the nose is solid, the cat's center of the eyes, and my mice eyes and nose. So small shapes like that can be color solid black if you want. Decide what you will use to color beforehand. Because again, if you do not have a permanent marker, it will mess up normal markers because they're water-based, okay? If you have a Sharpie marker, outline it first. Only outline all the shapes in black. You may fill in small shapes and small shapes only with solid black. If you don't have a Sharpie, again, and you plan to use normal markers anywhere in your picture, you're going to have to outline afterwards. Otherwise, it will smear and mess up your colors. Okay. We are not grading the outline of the picture, so you can just skip that. It's not a grade this year. So skip that. All right, here's some sample of different supplies you use. Color pencils, markers, if you have other markers at home, gel pens too, but gel pens are really tiny and they'll take forever. But any of these supplies will work. And of course, you need your practice paper, your real paper, and a black Sharpie or a normal black marker. And remember, using that normal marker, and you don't have a Sharpie outline later. Okay, so you want to come up with 5 different patterns. You see, I practiced. Some colors didn't work. See, I have this darker blue on a blue. I tried different shapes. This one's got hearts and lines. Tried different colors on things to see how they looked and whether the colors would work or not, to decide what I wanted to do on my good picture. And of course, don't practice on your good paper. Practice somewhere else to see what works best. Plan your colors that you're going to use ahead of time. You need to have at least 5 patterns. You want a color picture with bold, bright, vibrant colors like Britto. Again, you may use markers, color pencils, crayons, and Sharpie marker. We're not using oil pastels or paint this year. You need at least 5 different patterns for the picture to be repeated in the image. For example, stripes, polka dots, hearts, line designs, and other shapes. Mine has 6, and you want to make it something so that you can repeat it throughout the shape. Most of the shapes on the main object may be colored solid without any pattern. Accent items may be solid or have pattern. All the shapes in the background must be patterned. Again, I just talked about practicing them first. Okay. Because some colors will work when you put it on top of it. Some other colors, for this one, I think I did the dots and then did the orange around. Especially if you're using totally different colors. For example, if you're going to do yellow dots and an orange background, do all your yellow dots first and carefully design around. Or have all your backgrounds lighter, and you can use a darker color on top. The media will be different. Like color pencils works different than markers. These samples, for the most part, are all markers, because that's what I decided I want to use for my picture for the main part, except for this right here is seeing how the color pencil looked next to the pattern that I end up using in my toy mice. And of course, crayons will be totally different as well. So try them out, see how it goes, because some you can overwrite on top. Other ones you gotta, carefully plan. Color neatly and solid for the media that you're using. Remember, color pencils are small. You want to color slow, small, and solid. If you have to go around shapes, you want to outline them neatly and fill in. If you're going over top, test it first, because some mediums like to go over top, some don't. All right, so here's my sample. For what I did is I did the pink one shape first, did 3, and I had already planned in my mind ahead of time where the patterns that I did in my practice paper were going. Then I did my mouse, because I knew they were going to be gray with black stripes, and I just added small accents with different colors. And yes, if you don't have a lot of marker colors, I had a pack that had 16 colors, so I was able to get more. You could use color pencils in some places too. This silver part of my mice is a color pencil because I wanted it to be lighter than the gray marker and the black marker. And then I moved on to more of my background patterns in. So I did my 4 yellow with orange stripes. I did 3 green ones with darker green hearts, and I did orange with, I think that was raspberry, the color. And I did orange with raspberry polka dots. I have 4 shapes filled in. And I did it this way because I did my background first and my mice first, so that I made sure the colors that I used on the cat stand out more. And then, see, in the cat, I did some patterns on the ear. Go back. Oops, now I've lost my pattern here on the bottom and on the ears. And the rest I used solid colors so that the cat kind of stands out from the background. And having the different colors in the cat really helps to make it pop forward. Okay, and of course, we've already gone over the project criteria, and it's important that you are following the timeline that I give during my daily videos and working on it a little bit every day. And yes, there will be color check-ins along the way so I can see how your coloring is going and see if you need any adjustments or if something's not working real well. You do not have to show me your patterns that you're choosing ahead of time, but if you want to, you may. It won't be an assignment, but you can do that. Say, hey, does this color work together? And I said, sure. Or, well, I don't know. You've lost the other one because the colors are too dark. Stuff like that, okay? All right, have fun. And now we're ready to create.